Welcome to In Residence, a podcast from Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles. I'm Elizabeth Rawls, the publisher.
And I'm Lauren Iverson, the editorial director.
In this mini-series, we'll speak with the futures and the legends of interior design here in Atlanta.
You can find each of our interviewees in our print edition of Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles throughout the year or online at atlantahomesmac.com.
Come on in.
Welcome back to In Residence. Today's guests represent a new generation of architectural voices, thoughtful, collaborative, and deeply attuned to both tradition and evolution. The duo behind Pierre McKell Architects, Jacques Levet, and Connor McKell Bingham are building a practice rooted in contrast and balance where differing perspectives don't compete, they sharpen the work. Come on in and hear their story. Connor, Jacques, so excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us on In Residence. How are you doing?
Doing well, yeah.
It's a gloomy day for a podcast, but we're excited to have you here and bring a little sunshine to the day.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be fun.
Now, this is a very big year for y'all. It's your first year in business with, Pierre McKell, and you've just been named one of our Futures of Design at Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles magazine. I know there's a big award that, Connor, you will be winning as well, and we're going to get into all of that within the conversation later. So how are you feeling in your first year here?
The fact that it's been a year is mind-blowing, but it's great.
Yeah, we launched May 5th last year, and so it's been just a whirlwind and very, very quick, which I think is good that it feels that way. It's just been really fun.
Yeah.
That's what they say when you do what you love, it goes by so fast, right? Whatever the cliche saying is, and I feel like it is so cliche, but it makes so much sense when you do that. So I want to start the conversation a little bit by going back and learning more about your origin stories, because obviously you're making a name for yourself in the world of architecture now. You've had plenty of experience under other really well-known firms, but take us back kind of to the beginning here, where you guys really started to take interest in architecture and how that evolved over time. Jacques, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Southeast Louisiana, so was surrounded by historic houses, just outside of New Orleans, and experiencing the city a lot as well. So I really always had an interest in it from an early age. And environment is everything. Has had a huge impact on how I see design and experience it.
I love that. Connor, what about you?
It's interesting. I mean, similarly, it's just something that's always been of interest, but then the kind of the shift of this is something that could be my life was, I think, definitely tied to a home that my parents purchased in Golden, Colorado. It was a beautiful, like 1908 Victorian little bungalow surrounded by nothing but new architecture. Wow. And it's like in the heart of a college town. And it just was so cool to kind of transform time and go into this building and see how people used to live. And it was different. It felt different. It was intriguing. And we were renovating a kitchen and then just kind of working a lot in the yard. And I could see it. And this is in high school. I could just see the potential of the home. I was like, man, I can do this. This is incredible. I love this. It's energizing. It's motivating. And I think that was really where it clicked for me as like, this could be my career path.
Yeah, mine was a little later.
I love how, classical homes and architecture carries this air to it, because we had an interview with Norman Askins for the podcast as well. And he was kind of saying that when you step into these homes, it really just feels like this presence with the classical details. And there's so much to look at. And so hearing you say that, is that kind of similar when you're in this Victorian home and you're seeing these things? What about it is really clicking as you're looking at the details? What are you loving about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up in suburbia, so I had like a watered down version of architecture. And so being able to step back in time where like true craftspeople built the home and you can feel the detail, you can feel the care. And there's a big difference between the soul of a historic home and kind of a tract house. And I think we care about that soul. Yeah. We want to like inject that into all of our work and make sure that that's experienced by the users. And it is transformative to be able to be in a place, in a space that is designed And we take note of it, and we hope other people do too.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
And with older homes too, there's a lot of great architectural details and things to look at, obviously. But if a home has been around for 100, 150 years, it's had multiple generations of the same family, or perhaps different families. So you see how the home adapts or doesn't adapt. And so
Right.
you get to learn those lessons as well.
Right. And I relate to that so much when you say you grew up in suburbia, because I grew up in the Midwest in Iowa. We did not have any Philip Schutze houses, Jimmy Means, anything like that around. And so people ask similarly to maybe you guys of, oh, when did you develop this passion? It was definitely later in life, like Jacques said. But how lucky are we here in Atlanta to have the houses that we do and the inspiration that carries throughout. So now, you guys obviously are in business together now. You had to have met at some point in time. Tell us a little bit more about how your paths intersected.
Yeah, so we both started working at Historical Concepts. I was there just a little bit before Connor. We surprisingly never worked on any projects together. We weren't on the
Really?
same team or anything like that.
Well,
So
you saw each other at the office, right?
Right.
At least
constantly,
something.
constantly. So not working on the same projects perhaps led us to have more conversations and kind of just the back and forth.
Yeah.
So much more of a friendship than a working relationship at that point. But you kind of can really dig into the nitty gritty that way.
Now, when did you realize then that your creative instincts kind of melded well enough to start your own firm together then? Because like you said, you didn't work on any projects together. Clearly, you were bumping elbows enough and were friends and such like that. But how did you know that, oh, we in our different styles and experiences could actually come together and create something really amazing?
Well, I think the benefit to us actually not having been in the same studio or on the same project is that we were both a little bit removed from each other's work, and so we were able to be critical, candid. That's much better.
That's the polite way to say it, right?
We could just have real conversations. I was like, man, I wish it would have gone this way, or I really liked how that turned out. I wish our studio did this, or I wish like we could. It was just a lot of dreaming and thinking aloud, and we didn't really have to critique the other person too heavily, or like have that push and pull. So it was open.
Yeah, I can't say that there was a moment, honestly. It was just over the course of 10 years really of conversations. Connor and I are both passionate about teaching and things like that, so going to different universities and just having the discussions and just seeing how our different aesthetics kind of inform those conversations.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk a little bit about those different aesthetics because you did an interview with us at Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles for your Futures of Design article that we had put out. And you had mentioned that you guys have different design personalities. They're a little contradictory, maybe, in your own words, not mine, but it's in a really complimenting way. So I know, Jacques, you kind of lean a little bit more maximalist in that sense. And Connor, you're a little bit more classic minimalist, as you would describe it. So tell me more about what shaped these tastes and how you feel that they complement each other in the projects that you're working on.
Yeah, I think environment has a huge impact on that as well. So like, again, growing up South Louisiana, around a lot of historic homes. So I grew up on a farm. That farm existed for like 200 years or so. So there was a lot of accumulation of things. And I always had an interest in objects. So having just a mass amount of objects from different time periods and being able to learn about them always intrigued me. And texture of old houses, just plaster, things like that. Something I grew up with and now I find very appealing.
Yeah, so I'm opposite. Growing up, we would go visit my mom's parents quite a bit, and they were both Swedish, and so their design aesthetic was very streamlined, very a really restricted palette, and so we have like soft you know, lighter wood tones and blues and whites. And, you know, it was all intentional, but very sleek.
Right.
And not necessarily modern by any means. Like, they're very traditional shapes to their furniture. If you think about like Gustavian furniture, a design aesthetic, that's ornate, but it's simplified. It is kind of refined in that sense. And so it was sort of the first exposure to design, like
Yeah.
true classical work. And I was like, yeah, this is nice. Like, there's interest, there's enough detail to like intrigue you, but it's clean.
It's restrained in
Yeah.
a complimenting in an elegant way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, so what kinds of challenges are you running in then? Because I think maximalist and like classically restrained and elegant, and then you try to work on the same project together. How does that work?
Well, I think that the important thing about that is that we can both see the quality in design on either extremes. Just because we prefer to surround ourselves in a certain way, you know, for our own home, say, that doesn't mean that it's appropriate for whatever project we're working on. So, you know, we can have those conversations and find that happy middle ground, which usually it is a middle ground, on where it is and what fits where, and you know what amount of texture, how cleanliness it needs to be, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's so easy for us as designers to fall into a trap of repetition. And just because it is easy, we're like, we know what looks good and feels good to us, and we can do it and do it and do it, and it's successful on its own. But you know, that does fall flat eventually. And so
Yeah.
I think for us, it is just like we have a constant desire to like improve upon and to find what is right for the scenario, not just apply our own take or perspective and just kind of have that be the end result every time. I think there's intrigue and there's interest to the dichotomy that we both really value.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, a number of architects have a look, for lack of a better term, and I think we enjoy having that variety. Whether it's, you know, because of the place, the client, and the combination of, you know, everything else that's going on. So those conversations are really important to achieve that.
Well, I was gonna say it's got to keep the day to day even more interesting, though,
Oh, for
as
sure.
you're working
Plenty
on
of
stuff.
arguments, yeah.
Yeah, our Instagram feed to each other is quite interesting.
Absolutely opposing. I think the other thing that is really critical for us is that, you know, we very rarely have a singular individual as a client. It's a family, a couple, a partner, and
A review board.
a review board. And never do those people have the same view. And so I think we can kind of like pawn the other person off if we need to. And just in terms of like finding the balance or hearing the client, we'll go away from a meeting and be like, I heard something different than you. And then we're like, okay, why? And what was our takeaway? And like, where can we find what the actual solution is? Not just hear what we hear for ourselves.
That's so funny because I've done plenty of panels where I feel like the designer, whoever's on it, is talking about, oh, the wife will say one thing and then the husband says another, and you hear these different things. And so you guys can kind of tag team it in that way, having your different perspectives and such. And I'm sure that that actually aids you so much in more ways than one. So that's fascinating. Now, Jacques, I want to go back to a point that you have mentioned already, is that you grew up in kind of rural areas in near New Orleans and Louisiana and such like that. So this feels really distinct and kind of interesting. I know there's a lot of beautiful homes in that area, and you had that kind of influence from a young age, but growing up around that environment, did that teach you anything about materials and aging in place, beauty, grace, all the above? Tell us about that.
Oh goodness, that's a big question. Yeah, I mean, honestly, all the above. Southeast, you know, Louisiana is a harsh climate, so just seeing how things age, and what's appropriate, and learning the lessons of a vernacular architecture, like a true place-based architecture, and what benefits that can have. But also, like we kind of mentioned briefly, I grew up in a pretty typical home right next to my grandparents' home that they built,
Oh,
which
that's
was
fun.
right next to
Yeah.
the home that my grandfather grew up in.
Oh my gosh.
And so, you know, really seeing that kind of generational effect
Yeah.
for a singular home, but also for, you know, kind of a wider view, that was a huge lesson. And seeing how the homes live, age, entertain. South is, they're proud of their homes and proud of their places and enjoy sharing it. So seeing how that really functions.
Well, you see that so much these days where these families, they're almost like family compounds,
Yeah.
right? You've got the parents and then the grandparents and then the in-law suites and then the kids eventually grow up and they want a home of their own as well. And so there's a longevity there that I'm sure it sounds like you've learned from a young age.
And I would say that having clients come to you with that mentality is kind of on the rare side. You have to mention that to them. There's lots of times when they're talking about the nursery, for instance, and we're like, oh, sorry to tell you, but when this house is complete, your child's not going to be at nursery anymore.
There'll be no crib in there.
Yeah, we need to think a little further out here.
Right. Well, you do the best you can, I suppose, in those instances and just hope that they hear you.
Yep.
I love it. Now, Connor, your path is also unique because you were the last undergraduate class at the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture, which is so cool. Tell me more about this learning experience. How did this shape the architect that you are today? And just what was that kind of like while you went through it?
Yeah, it was an incredibly unique, wonderful experience. Being the last undergrad to go through prior to the school transitioning to entirely a graduate program. I was the sole individual in my class.
Oh my gosh, you were the only one?
I was the only one.
Whoa.
And so I was in classes with graduate level students, and the school itself was very small, is very small, and so the student to faculty ratio was 1-to-1. It was just a wonderful group of people who were fully committed to this world of architecture and design. And you had to live on campus. So we lived and studied in Frank Lloyd Wright's second and third home and studios in Spring Green, Wisconsin, and Scottsdale, Arizona. And I mean, so just being able to be surrounded in that immersive environment. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with those, but they're two sides of a coin. They're like completely different spaces and design qualities, aesthetics, but they're representative of the place. And it was just great to be taught by the buildings that were there. It was great to be taught by the students that were there that were, years ahead of me in their career development, and also the faculty that was there. It was really, really cool.
That's amazing. Do you feel like there's any lessons or so, like takeaways from that time during that program that you're still utilizing to this day? I'm sure there's plenty, but is there anything that sticks out?
Absolutely. We talked so much about the pedagogy of architecture. I've become so annoyingly invested in the education of architecture and how that is changed over the years. We used to be a profession that was taught by doing and taught by mentorship, and now that's transitioned to kind of a separation of schooling then practice. And it never was that way, and I think that's why we have such a divide between the educational or the academic path and then the practice path. And I really think that Jacques and I both are so motivated and committed to kind of blending that back together. Like, we should always be learning while we're practicing.
Absolutely.
And vice versa, just giving people opportunities to see work and how what we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Well, you both do different teaching things. I mean, Jacques, you were saying earlier today that you will go into some classes in schools and do seminars with them. Connor, I know you do a lot of work, the ICAA and various things there too. Tell us more about kind of those experiences and what that means to you to be able to, as you're kind of ramping up in your singular career in your own firm, what it means to instill some things into these younger generations that are excited about architecture.
Yeah. Should I go first? There's so many things. Goodness. So so my undergrad was in engineering, biomedical engineering. So I had a different path.
What?
I know.
Yeah.
He's so smart.
Okay.
My path was a little.
Give me a few details here because we got to learn more about that.
I mean, coming from high school, I was always interested in architecture, things like that, and preservation, design, but the classical and traditional world of design is not apparent at most schools. And I was interested in lots of things. So I went into engineering because I was not interested in what the architecture school was doing. After that, I actually went to medical school for a couple of years. And it was at that point where a couple of key people just introduced me to this world and showed me that this work exists.
Right.
So I say that to kind of really get back to your question. Just being able to go to these universities and talk to students, say, this is the work that we do in a classical and traditional realm. If you have an interest in it, like, come, great, let's learn some more. And even if you don't, if it's not what you're going to do for your career, just to be introduced to it and have a slight understanding of what's happening.
Absolutely. What about you, Connor? How is that influence that you're giving to these or having on maybe this even younger generation than y'all are? What does that mean to you in those instances?
Yeah, a very similar perspective. It's interesting. For my graduate degree, I went to the University of Colorado, Denver, and so that was it's just a traditional school in terms, not traditional in terms of classical, but just kind of what you'd expect from a modern architecture education system. And there was a divide. There was a lot of emphasis behind innovation. And unfortunately, I feel like the request of a lot of the students today is to innovate without any foundation. So how can you innovate if you don't have the basic foundational tools to innovate with? And so I think for us, working with the ICAA, having the opportunity to go to several of these state schools, and I mean, we also work with professionals who have that gap in their education, and we work with the New Heights program here in Atlanta and also in New York. And so that's with high school and middle school, and just giving the chance. Like, I feel like
That's really
most
what it
architectural
is.
students just don't even have the opportunity to hear the conversation. And so if it's great, we really do love working with the ICAA and supporting their mission. And it's fun, and it's great to work with everyone there.
Yeah, and I think Connor and I both have had some key mentors like involved in our trajectories, and not saying that we're going to be pivotal in someone's life, but just be
You may be, you never know.
possibly, but just to say, like, this is a realm, and invite them to our world so they can meet other people, and just have a greater chance at finding something that they truly enjoy doing.
Well, that's what it's all about too, though, isn't it? Connections
Yeah.
and meeting people and just getting your feet wet in the industry. And then you never know who you're going to meet, like you
Exactly.
said, who's going to have an influence on you
Yeah.
and really expand your breadth of knowledge there.
Yeah, that does feel so true and critical for me as well. I just feel like some of these mentors, it's not just the exposure, but man, just the faith or belief in you to just be like, no, you can do anything. You can, just try. Or like, I think we are all so limiting in our own perspective.
Yeah.
And just to have someone there to just be like, no, just do it. You'll be fine. It's great. And then that motivation is really impactful.
Right. Well, those people have done it themselves at some point in time too. So they're almost like a safety net to encourage you to be like, no, you're going to be fine. It's so scary, but you will be fine.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, speaking of, mentors and such like that, you guys have worked for some really incredible architects in your past before launching your own firm. For example, Historical Concepts, who I am such a big fan of. Tell me more about your time at this firm, learning under the likes of Andrew Kogar, Jim Strickland, and all the likes of the people who taught you.
Yeah. So
Start with Jim.
yeah, it kind of goes back to where Connor and I were on different teams. So I was working under Jim Strickland, who's the founder of the firm, and my gosh, the imagination and just the ability to see opportunities for design in anything with him was phenomenal. That was a huge lesson. I mean, regardless if we were working on just a garden shed or a larger house, we were trying to figure out how can we make that great. What's exciting about it to, that the client will connect with. And, gosh, we would spend so much time just thinking and rethinking as the project goes along, which is honestly another huge lesson, to never stop that kind of design process, even when walls are up, which is sometimes a little scary. Just great person to learn from.
Well, Jim, while we're on that subject, I love Jim Strickland. I think he is such a fascinating, fabulous person. And he kind of has an interesting origin story too, as well, where he didn't have maybe that proper training, and the influence that he's had on so many people is so vast. And so I love hearing that, and all the things that you were able to learn and kind of bites that you could take from the experience. So Connor, what about you? What was your experience like?
Well, I think very similarly, just like such a soft spot in my heart for Jim, just such a big personality, so much like care for the world in general and excitement for the people that he works with. And for his clients, he's such a good dreamer. And so very much had that experience with Jim on the periphery. My day-to-day working historical concepts was with Andrew Kogar, and he has that same kind of charisma that Jim has, but he is a doer, and he's a great leader. I learned so much from him, and I think his ability to kind of serve as a pivotal figure on a project is really great. He just valued the team, and I don't just mean the architectural team, like the interior designers, the landscape team. Man, he saw everyone and heard their vision and worked really hard to make the best of the project that it could be. And he's a problem solver. We are in a field where there are always problems. There are always issues. Nothing ever goes to plan. And so it takes a certain type of personality to be able to manage that in a room full of people where tempers might be high.
Right.
A lot of money's at stake, and just be like, here's the vision. We are solving a problem. Like, let's do it. Let's be positive. Jim and Andrew both just have wonderfully positive outlooks on life and on our field. And it really helps the whole project.
Yeah, and that kind of sums up a big lesson from both of them and others, that you approach these things with confidence, but not an ego. To be able to have that collaboration with the team, because you really need the team to pull it off. Like, you really need them.
Absolutely, it's a team mindset.
Yeah, we were also talking about this too. Is like, all of these different areas, we often say like we have different areas of expertise, but it's really not that. We have different areas of responsibility, and every project is new, every design problem is new, and we don't know how to do it. And so being able to have the growth mindset, learning mindset, and just be able to tackle a problem and find a solution, as opposed to, I know how to do it, and this is how we're going to do it. Like, no one, that's hard. That's really hard to work with.
Absolutely.
The outcome isn't there.
The collaboration is the most important part. But it sounds like you guys have had an incredible foundation and are continuing to grow. This first year of business for you, I know it's no small leap to jump from working under someone to manning your own firm. So I think that, that's a common trajectory for designers, architects, landscape architects, anyone really in the industry, is to have that experience and then maybe try to step out on their own. So for those people, what advice would you maybe give to people who are interested in one day having their own firm? What did you guys have to trust in each other to know that you were ready to take the next step?
Well, it was definitely a leap of faith, that's for sure. You never feel, I've never talked to anyone that really felt ready to do it.
Yeah.
Connor and I have talked about it off and on for a very long time. And the fact that we kept coming back to the same conversation and coming up with the same conclusion at least gave me confidence.
Yeah. Well, and I think just kind of living around each other, experiencing the design world together, just kind of parallel, not necessarily on the same projects for the past 10 years, is, I came to just trust his values. And for that it is a high standard of excellence. And for me, I have a very high standard of excellence. If I'm going to work on something, I want it to be really good. And if I'm going to invest my time, I want the end result to be good. And Jacques just kind of has the same perspective. And so for that, there was no trust to have to be gained. It just already was there. And so it was a pretty easy transition in terms of, time is now. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the trust in one another and having that, sameness in the sense of we both want this to be perfect, and it's probably not going to be totally perfect, but at least we want that same level is the most important part. Because if you were differing on that, then I don't even want to know how that would go, right? Well, Connor, Jacques, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for joining the
thank
In
you.
Residence podcast and giving us your distinct personalities and voices. And I can't wait to see where the rest of it goes for you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.